Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition. That is Zach. I am Braden. Welcome to the program. Defense, Titans, every position. We're going to predict every single spot on the roster today. We did the offense on Monday, so go check out that episode. We're going to do the defense today. Again, lots of college football next week on the show as we will be live from Atlanta. So we'll give you some updates on scheduling for next week, but lots of Titans defense today on the show. Zach, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon. We did 25 roster spots on Monday when we talked about the offense. We filled 25. That's 3 quarterbacks, 8 offensive linemen, 3 tight ends, 5 running backs, and 6 wide receivers. So that means we got a ton to fill up today.
And some special, got to get some special team stuff in there as well. So, again, a little bit of a shorter show today. We're going to focus on the Titans defense. Lots of college football stuff that's going on. We're going to be live from Atlanta next week. Little slight programming note for you guys. Next week's show will be, instead of Monday at 1 o'clock, it will be Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We're going to let day 1 and day 2 of Media Days start to happen. We'll give you like a midway halftime update of SEC Media Days live from Atlanta. So we'll be doing that next week on the show. So set your notifications. Really, Zach, if you just set your notifications, you're going to be good to go.
You won't ever miss a show.
You'll be good to go no matter what happens. No matter what time.
Exactly. It makes no sense not to go ahead and head over to the YouTube page for 440 Sports or the YouTube page, even for Broadway Sports Media if you want to, and turn on notifications for both. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. I think we're going to be on Twitch sooner or later, but mainly come to YouTube because that's where for sure you can interact with the show.
And if you would like to chime in, of course, we'll make sure we get the comments up and running on the show. So go ahead and get those questions in. If you got any questions about the Titans defense today on the show, again, we're going to go position by position and set all of that up. We will be back.
If you want to tell us what we got wrong on Monday, that's fine. We'll do a call back if we need to.
Totally fine for me. I got no problems being wrong. My wife says that all the time, so it's all good. Of course, we'll be back in the Cast Collective studio, not next week, but the week after that. That, again, is just so everybody knows, SEC Media Days next week. I think I've mentioned it now a few times. A little different schedule, Tuesday show instead of Monday. However, all of the shows, no matter when they happen and no matter where they take place, Zach, are brought to you by the wonderful and amazing folks at the Kingston Group, Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. And I might add, Zach, award-winning.
Oh, I like it. They're like me. They're award-winning.
Yes. Yes, they are. It doesn't matter what awards we're talking about. You have won an award, as has the Kingston Group. Listen, they built our carport for us with the shed, and it's all fancy and stuff. It's got the tray ceiling with the ceiling fan and the dimmer switches, and it's very swanky.
Sounds like Kingston Group is for winners.
Yes. I would like to get an award at some point, maybe. I don't know. But Kingston Group does. You do. So I'm in good company here on the show.
There you go.
That's what matters.
You're a winner by association.
Yes, I'm totally fine with that. BuildKG.com is the website, so go to there, check them out, BuildKG.com, and tell them that 440 Sports sent you. Make sure you follow all the Twitter accounts as well, at 440 Sports, at FWordsPod, at Braden Gall, at Broadway Sports Media, all that great stuff. So make sure you're checking out all of that. All right, so are we going to start with the defensive line, or do we have a broader question we'd like to ask about the Titans?
Well, I mean, today's all about the Titans defense, right? And that's what we're really focused on. We're going to fill up those, 26 roster spots that are left that we constructed on Sunday. Kind of like Kingston Group constructs your kitchen. We are constructing the Titans roster.
See, I like that.
Synergy right there.
I like that.
But I think what helps the final 53, and I look at the defense is obviously going to carry the bulk, including special teams, the bulk of the roster. And I look at how versatility helps the final 53, specifically players like Danico Autry mainly, but also Ola Adeni. And don't forget, Rashad Weaver is also someone they've been putting on the defensive line and outside linebacker spot. For the purposes of today, I am treating Ola and Rashad as outside linebackers and Danico as a defensive lineman.
I did both of that. That's exactly how I did it as well.
Yeah. But when you talk about it, this has been something that they have harped on since Mike Vrabel took over. Front multiplicity, coverage consistency. And I kind of think it's almost like front multiplicity, coverage consistency, coverage multiplicity, because pretty much they have about 10 people that can play multiple spots at a high level. Yeah, and that helps the 53 because that means you may be able to pick up a 7th wide receiver if you wanted to, because you don't need to carry all these defensive linemen and all that kind of stuff.
It's front multiplicity, but pass rush consistency.
There you go.
That's what we want. It's like coverage consistency, but as long as it's consistently disguised differently every time. Like that's what it's all about. So I agree with you. I think there are a few players here, and again, I think to your point about Danico Autry, Rashad Weaver, for example, on pass rush downs, you'd like Weaver to be outside or maybe inside because he allows you to get a third pass rusher on the field. If you're playing in a run situation on 1st and 10, Weaver's going to be kicked out because that's where you get a bigger body in a stronger situation holding the edge there, maybe against the run. So they allow those pieces. There's some nice pieces in there that allow for some flexibility as it pertains to the front seven. That is for sure. All right, you want to start with the defensive line specifically?
Yeah, let's do the defensive line, and apparently it didn't. Let's go to talk about the defensive line. Set me up.
All right. So the defensive line here, I think this is actually where there could be an extra piece or a surprise when we get done with camp. By the way, practice opens officially, I believe, 9:30 a.m. on July 27th. Mike Vrabel will have a press conference, I believe, on the 26th. So the media's first practice availability would be July 27th at like 9:30 a.m., I think. And I think the defensive line is where you could see some actual surprises at the end of camp, where maybe a guy or two, and I've got a name on here that maybe you have, maybe you don't have, that I think could be a surprise. I think it is a very heated battle for the final two spots on the defensive line.
Yeah, I think while we're including Danico Autry, it's Jeffrey Simmons, Tierra Tart, Danico Autry, Naquan Jones are a lock.
Yes.
They are absolute locks. Now, what you got is Murch, who is a former 5th-round pick, Laurel Murchison, the big Murch, who has kind of just blended in, whether it was Kyle Peko last year. He's just, you don't really notice Murch, but that's also a good thing and a bad thing, right? He's not doing anything that's hurting the team, but he's not doing anything that really elevates the team. Like, you notice Tierra Tart, you notice Naquan Jones, both undrafted free agents. And to me, a lot of people are kind of putting in marker that Laurel Murchison is making the roster that I've seen a few people discuss. I wouldn't.
I don't have him on my 53 right now.
And I don't think you should. I think at a certain point, a guy's just a guy. And does he have any upside? No. And that's the problem that you have. But don't forget, he is relatively young. I think he's just now turned 24, and he's already this is a 3rd year in the league. So he's not old, technically. He's just not spectacular or noticeable. And I think sometimes that can hurt you, especially when they bring in guys like Deshaun Hand, DeMarcus Walker, DeMarcus Walker is coming from Houston. A lot of people have him markered in and Sharpie that he's going to make it because, he's a Houston guy. So obviously he's going to make the roster. I don't think he's a lock either. I think when you really comes down to it, I don't really know who I'm penciling in at that 5th spot, but I do know they're going to carry 5 defensive linemen, including
not 6. You don't think there could be a 6th guy?
There may be and I'll get to where I think an extra floater roster position could come from later on in the show. But it is a possibility, but I also don't think with the injuries that they have, it's necessarily needed.
We will also, of course, for each one of these positions, explain where we think they belong inside the AFC South in terms of, we did that on Monday for the offense as well. So I think you're right. Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, Naquan Jones, Tierra Tart. I think those 4 are absolute locks. When I projected, I put 2 more players in along the D-line, and that was Jaden Peavy and DeMarcus Walker. Not because he played in Houston, but because he's a fully formed, grown adult professional football player who's 6'4", 280 pounds. I think those 2 are the 2 that I think Peavy and Walker, one of those 2 is going to make the roster. I could see both. I put both on here because to your point about the Titans' flexibility, like, they actually have an extra spot or 2 to play with.
And the thing is, when you they play a lot of 2 defensive linemen. So technically, Danico Autry's off ball at certain points because Jeffrey Simmons and Tierra Tart, Jeffrey Simmons, Naquan Jones are up front.
Right.
I think that's the issue with carrying 6, is that they don't necessarily would ever utilize 6, where they may utilize someone else. I think DeMarcus Walker, who in limited playing time with the Denver Broncos, if I'm not mistaken, that's where he came from before Houston, he actually had like 5.5 sacks. And that was very, very limited playing time on that team. And when you have someone that has that kind of effect in limited playing time, can still get 5.5 sacks. That's pretty good, right? I
Yeah. Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's a guy that has some talent, but then he goes to Houston and he's sort of just lost in the rotation.
Yep.
And I think that this defensive line group is so deep, it's going to be easy to be lost in the rotation if you don't stand out in this training camp. And they don't have to keep you. You're fighting for to
Right.
me, a fifth spot on the defensive line is locked in. We don't know who it is yet, but I mean that's a locked in spot. I think 6 is a luxury.
I think to your point about you better be good, you better wow some people. That's why I went with PV or Walker, because I think
Peavy's got the body, right?
they have the talent, like, whereas Murch I think has like the experience and some of the knowledge of the system and what they want to do because he's been here. I don't think he has the upside of Jaden Peavy. I think Peavy has the most upside of all of them to be a true either one of those two interior lineman positions. I think Walker feels like a little bit of a luxury who could also be flexible and move inside and outside as well. I would be surprised if it's not one of those two because of their upside.
Yeah,
now, are they gonna keep 6? Probably not, but that's what I did.
Yeah, I think PV and Haskell, if they don't make it onto the roster, are obviously going to be on the practice squad. I do think that you may see 2 people land on the practice squad off the back end of this list, including Deshaun Hand, who we haven't really talked about, who was a good player at Alabama. And we know that the Titans can get more out of most players when other teams can't. As far as where this ranks, to me, it's tough because I kind of like what they did in Indianapolis with signing Yannick Ngakoue, but it's just Yannick and Buckner. There's no depth behind it. I think Simmons and Autry are a better combination than those two. So
it's hard. How do you do it though? Do you include outside linebackers though? Like I feel like
I am not in this particular thing, but if you do, then it's the Titans. I mean, it's hands down Titans if you conclude both.
This is how I would do it. Let's take away inside linebacker and give the edge to the Colts. But if you go outside linebacker and true defensive line and kind of put them and say your front line, I think it is the Titans 1, Colts 2, and I think they are head and shoulders above everybody else.
I would agree with that.
I think the Colts front line is very good. I just don't think it's as good as the Titans, but I think they're both much better than Houston and Jacksonville.
I think, and the problem I have with the Colts is I don't think it's deep. Like I don't think anything that the Colts have anywhere besides maybe running back is deep enough to sustain a bunch of injuries. I just don't see it. I just look at the defense as a whole. You take 1 or 2 players out of that thing, I don't think that they can keep up the momentum.
And Jacksonville's got some really nice pieces.
We'll see how they act
at all these places, but it's kind of like I like their outside linebackers better than their defensive line, but I like their inside linebackers, but not as much as the Titans, but like not as much as Darius Leonard. So it's kind of like it's almost like front 7 as a group you have to kind of look at.
Well, if it's front 7 as a group without the inside linebackers, Titans are the clear 1 favorite. And listen, we're not going to really talk a lot about the outside linebacker position, but just because it's kind of we've seen it, right? It's the same 4 as last year, except for Rashad Weaver will be healthy. But it's Bud Dupree, it's Harold Landry. The thing is, Bud Dupree coming back from injury, that's the most important key for this defense because he's a force multiplier when healthy. Even when he's not fully healthy, he was still a force multiplier when he's on the field. Just proven. It's just proven. Like, I don't know how many times anybody has to say it.
Despite what all the internet people will tell you that he's not a force multiplier.
Yeah.
Don't listen to them. That's why you listen to this show, of course, on the 440 Sportsnet. Harold Landry, Bud Dupree, Rashad Weaver, Ola Adenehi.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. So those are the 4 I've got at outside linebacker. It's who did you have at number 5 for your defensive line? Who was official?
I think if I don't have anybody official, but I think if I was a betting man, I would probably put DeMarcus Walker.
Okay, that's fair. We're on the same. We're in the same ballpark. Then that's for sure. All right, do you want to go inside linebacker here?
Yeah, let's go inside linebacker.
So
I think it's a strength of this defense right now.
David Long, Zach Cunningham, Monty Rice, Chance Campbell,
Dylan Cole, and Chance Campbell. I think they're carrying 5 inside linebackers due to special teams needs.
Okay.
And I think because Dylan Cole plays such explosive special teams, I think they're going to carry 5. And really, they can carry 5. That's not even the roster spot that I have that's floating around that I talked about earlier. They can carry 5 easily and justify it by special teams work because I think Chance Campbell's going to probably work into special teams a little bit. But I look at Chance Campbell as him and
Cole?
Zach
Oh,
Cunningham are
Cunningham. Okay.
kind of the same. Like they're very instinctive, but they may be a liability in pass coverage. And I think David Long and Monty Rice are the same. And I think Dylan Cole can play both spots when needed and play special teams.
Is there a chance Campbell sounds weird? Is there a chance that Chance Campbell doesn't make the team at all and is not on the active roster? He's more of a practice squad guy. Cole was the first guy into the. Now again, take this for what it's worth. It just is what it is. But when they went second team during OTAs and minicamp, Cole was one of the first guys in. I think we mentioned that on the show a couple of weeks ago. But Campbell looks very, like you said, very instinctual. He looks like he knows what he's supposed to be doing, but sometimes he's just going to get out athleted, I think. And so can he overcome that? Is there a chance that he's not on the final 53? I think there's a chance.
I think there's a chance, but I don't really know. Maybe a ninth offensive lineman or a seventh wide receiver or seventh cornerback, I guess. But I think that they saw something in him to take him in the sixth. And while we've seen Des Fitzpatrick and not make the team, even though he's a fourth round pick last year and he went on the practice squad in the final 53, I think Chance Campbell's a better rookie than what Des Fitzpatrick was. And I think they really like what Chance Campbell can bring. He may not be active on game days, but I think he has a good chance to make the final 53.
I think that sounds right. Was it 46 that are active, 47 if you carry an eighth offensive lineman. It's interesting though to see the evolution of this position though, to go sort of from like Rashaan Evans to then Jayon Brown now to David Long. It's like they're getting smaller. We're just going to get smaller and smaller. But Cunningham is just I think Cunningham is a great player in the middle there. We'll see what his game now looks like in this defense with a full offseason and sort of all the time to get acclimated. But it has changed a lot over the last few years. This position has.
And I don't think it's as big a liability or question mark as what you've seen in previous years. Jayon Brown had the injury. Rashaan Evans just wasn't that good. I think this is all corrected, and I think it's a pretty deep spot for the Tennessee Titans. And I'll say this about David Long. I know a lot of Titans fans are gonna say, "Oh, he's gonna get paid big money on the free agent market."
No,
we talked about it on Football and Other Efforts with Mike Herndon this past week, and new episode out if you haven't listened to it wherever you get podcasts.
Ooh,
we talked about David Long and about how he may be typically scheme dependent. And he's too undersized. And I think when you have those two things, you yourself, that he's worth every penny the Titans are willing to pay him. I think when Dane Cruikshank was hitting the free agent market, everybody said, "Oh, he's going to get paid a lot of money. We better lock him up because he's going to get paid a lot of money." Got 1 year contract, $3 million deal. Same thing with James Brown. I think that the free agent market is picking up that certain players that are undersized or maybe not as unathletic or not as athletic as other NFL players that thrive in the Tennessee Titans system aren't going to thrive in their systems. And I think the market is cold for certain players on this Tennessee Titans roster.
I agree. I think Brown and Long are very specific pieces of a bigger puzzle, and they work very well in that puzzle. You will not meet a bigger Jayon Brown fan than me. I think Jayon Brown, I love the way he plays the game. Super smart guy. I think he was a great member of the team, all that stuff. I just think the injury history and maybe the cost, and basically a replacement who's a similar version of him with David Long. I think David Long's a little bit more punchy in the box.
Yeah.
Even though he's a little undersized, dude does not care about his body. That can be a good thing, and it can be a concern as well. I do think there's a question about how long he can play like that inside the box in an NFL defense. I think that's why Cunningham, the much bigger player, is going to have to do some of the things that, frankly, Rashaan Evans couldn't. Right? I think that's the point. Front seven, do you think they are better as a whole today than they were at this time last year? And where does your entire front seven, inside, outside, defensive line, where do you rank in the AFC, the Titans, and everybody else?
I would say it is 100 times better because it's addition by subtraction by not having Rashaan Evans. So it's 100 times better than last year. And I think that with another year, Jeffrey Simmons, another year, Danico Autry, Naquan Jones taking another step forward, Zach Cunningham in place of Rashaan Evans. I think David Long is an upgrade over Jayon Brown. I think the outside linebackers are fully healthy in Harold Landry and in Bud Dupree. I think it's even though I really like the inside linebackers at the Colts, I think they are better than the Titans inside linebackers. I still think the front seven is number one in the AFC South. and one of the better front sevens in the NFL.
I completely agree with that. Plus Rashad Weaver, like that's an additional piece that you didn't really have last year. So I think they are better this year. I think they're better than the Colts, but just bare. I think the Colts front seven as a collective is pretty damn good. I would put the Titans above them. I think they're two of the best front sevens in football, as long as the Colts guys stay healthy, which again is a big question for Darius.
And as long as Gus Bradley's scheme works,
right? Yeah,
because I know that it may be similar to Matt Eberflus, but Matt Eberflus is, I think, a way better defensive coordinator than Gus Bradley, and I think he's shown that.
Okay, so it sounds like Titans 1. I would go Jacksonville 3, Houston 4, which is largely going to be what everything happened. Every position group is Houston 4, Jacksonville 3, basically. All right, cornerback. I have Christian Fulton, Caleb Farley, Elijah Molden, Roger McCreary. And I think there's some interesting decisions here, but I think they are operating from a position of luxury. I went with Chris Jackson and Buster Screen.
Exactly.
But I think they've got a couple of options here. Those are the two I would pick.
I think that people are overinflating these other guys, and I don't even care about these other guys.
Greg Maben?
I don't think he makes it over Buster Screen. Like, I think Greg Maben is going to end up back on the practice squad if he's practice squad eligible. I think he may be because he hasn't accumulated enough games. But, like, I see people talking about Trey Swilling, and I see people talk about who's the other guy?
I mean, the only one I've written down here is Maben.
Yeah, I think Maben may make it, but I don't think he's going to make it over Buster Screen. I think they really like Buster Screen. And so then who do you put Greg Maben in over it? Because all the younger guys, I think, are better than Greg Maben.
No, I do. I think Swilling is an interesting player. I think he's got an interesting talent.
He'll be practice squad for sure.
Yes, I think you want to keep him in the organization. I think you want to see if you can develop him and keep him in the organization. I thought Chris Jackson looked pretty good in camp. Like, he was very comfortable, never out of position. You know, maybe he's limited physically, but he was never doing it. Like, him and Buster Screen were kind of in the right place at all times. And I think, like, I don't remember the secondary. I don't remember the defensive coaching staff talking to them at all. Like, they were talking to the linebackers a lot. They were not, and the safeties. They were not talking to the corners very much. For whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I think that Chris Jackson is such a good signing that it's often, or draft pick that's often overlooked because he's a 7th round pick, and he does have, for a 7th round pick out of Marshall, he does have a little bit of flaws to his game here and there, and they show up sometimes. But overall, with the defensive line, your cornerback group being this young, they work in sync. I think that if you were to take Chris Jackson and put him on another team, you probably wouldn't even know who he was. I think that the same can be said for Buster Screen, who we know and have seen float around the league. He's kind of found a little permanent home here, and he seems to be well liked by the coaching staff, by the media, by the fans. I think that because of this defensive line group, because of the offensive linebackers, that front seven, it allows you to be able to get away with carrying 6. I don't think they'll carry more than 6 of cornerbacks. And I think it's going to be the same group plus Roger McCreary that you saw last year.
It is a very fun, interesting, athletic, talented, versatile group of players. It's it is a good group of dudes, man. They've got big size guys that are on the outside. They've got tough, physical, hard-nosed dudes that are real strong and play inside. They've got speed on the outside. Like, they kind of have a guy that can do almost everything that you can ask a secondary player to do, and they've got one of those.
Yeah.
And they're all young and cheap right now. So
they can all play multiple spots, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing, is that they can all line up outside. They can all line up in the slot. They could probably all cover tight ends. I mean, they can pretty much do whatever you need them to do. And that's what the Titans want. And that's what the Titans like. That's the theme of the defense right now, is they could throw about 100 combinations of 11 different players out on defense and match up with almost any offense in the league.
I think Vrabel sits back and is just like feast. Like, he looks at the different combinations and creativity he can be. And it's like a Belichickian, like, oh, we might have 1 down lineman this week. We might have 5 down linemen this week. We might have 1 linebacker. We might have 3. We might have 6 DBs. We might have 3. Like, I think he sees all the different iterations, and he gets, like, just
It's a fever dream.
He's fully aroused.
It's a defensive coordinator's fever dream to have the talent the Titans have amassed over the last 3
Yeah,
seasons.
he is fully aroused when he watches the different
Oh, yeah.
flexibilities and tapes.
And I'll have to say,
Pants get a little
I
tight.
get aroused. I get aroused watching this team play defense. I thought it was the most fun that I've had since the Titans went 13-3 watching a Tennessee Titans defense.
Now, I will say, now, first of all, I'm not even wearing pants right now. I'm so excited to talk about the Titans defense. I will say, and Donovan, we'll get to your question here momentarily, but I think that what's interesting is defensive metrics. And I was listening to the Music City Audible, of course, shout out to the guys, Justin and Justin, talking about how the defensive metrics don't always, they're harder to predict. They're not as linear and certainly the Titans defense is an example of this, where they've kind of gone way up and down the last couple of seasons. There's no way I can look at this talent and say they're the best defensive line in the division, the best set of outside linebackers in the division, the best defensive front in the division, the best corners in the division, maybe the best corners in the AFC. I think the Colts are number 2.
Ooh.
I think the Colts are number 2, but like a distant number 2 if everybody's healthy at corner. We'll get to safety in a second, but
the Bills. I mean, I think that the
good.
Bills, the cornerbacks are pretty good. I have a hard time jumping all in on the cornerback group as the best in the division. I think that right now the Colts
are better,
and the Titans are the same.
Wow, I'm surprised you said that, because Gilmore's
that's the
old.
thing, is that we got to see, right? We got to see what Caleb Farley can do. We got to see what Roger McCreary can do. Can Buster Screen duplicate? Can Christian Fulton duplicate their success? I'm pretty confident in Elijah Molden. But then you got to look over there. Okay, is Kenny Moore going to come back and get paid? Is Stephon Gilmore, is he going to be who he was last, or New England Stephon Gilmore? It's a lot of questions on both sides. So
yeah,
I think in the end, the Titans cornerbacks will be the best. I just don't know if I'd rank them above them right now.
I am assuming Caleb Farley, like you've always said, like you have to. You've said all offseason, like you have to bank on Caleb Farley being a starting outside corner. And if he is ready and prepared and healthy enough to be a starting outside corner, then I think he's pretty good.
Yeah, if Caleb Farley is who he was drafted to be,
right,
then obviously the Titans will have the best cornerback group in the AFC, in the AFC South, and possibly one of the better ones in AFC.
That's a first round. Their top 4 is a first round pick, 2 second-round picks, and a third-round pick. Yeah. So like they've invested in this position, and I think you can tell.
I do think this is in the conversation for top 5, top 3 defense in the NFL.
Yeah, I would put him top 5. I'm not sure I'm going top 3, but I think they're top 5 for sure. Safety, Kevin Byard, and we'll get to your question, Donovan, here about who do you think can replace Dane Cruikshank in dime packages, and this is replace Dane Cruikshank by committee. We'll get to that in a second, but it's Kevin Byard, Amani Hooker, Theo Jackson, AJ Moore. I think are the 4, because Moore's playing a lot of special teams. But that's the 4, right?
Yeah. I fully agree. I think AJ Moore is a lock to make the team. I think some combination of basically what you said, Theo Jackson, Elijah Molden, I think I said AJ Moore, Amani Hooker, maybe even Monty Rice can play that cover of the tight end, role, the tight end eraser that Dane Cruikshank played. Because to be honest, Dane Cruikshank, a lot of people think that he was an eraser, and he was spectacular against tight ends. But there's also a lot of times he didn't play a lot of snaps, even against George Kittle and Travis Kelce. So he got the highlight and splash plays, but when you go in and look at the snap count and all that kind of stuff, you got to kind of adjust how much was it worth. They were already kind of doing by committee, right? So that's the thing.
If you're asking, if Donovan's question is like who is truly the dime back or the nickel back, I think it depends on who you're playing against. If you're playing against a bigger team with more tight ends that want to play more in the box, then I think you're looking at far more of Theo Jackson and Elijah Molden being on the field. You also have to remember Caleb Farley wasn't a part of those dime packages for most of the season last year, and we are now assuming sort of that Christian Fulton and Caleb Farley are your outside corners. So Elijah Molden kind of becomes that Logan Ryan in the box, do everything. You can blitz him. I'm telling you, they are going to.
He did well against tight ends. I mean, even for a guy who is knocked on for his size and his lack of athletic ability, he did really well against some tight ends. I remember him knocking the ball out for some guys and tackling them immediately in the ground, because the way that they play defense, they keep the tight end in front of them. So it should be mostly an easy tackle for someone.
I could see Elijah Molden with 4 sacks this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think they're going to bring him on delayed blitzes, safety blitzes, nickel blitzes, slot blitzes. I think they're going to use him a lot around the line of scrimmage because that's how physical he is. I love the different pieces that they have. It's very arousing, Zach, to look at all the different pieces.
And I think Amani Hooker is going to get paid about an $8 to $10 million a year contract, and I think that's what he's worth. And I think that's great value for the Titans, and they get to keep Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker around for a long time.
And again, I think it's the best secondary in the division. So
yeah. I would say once you add the safeties, I think they're the best secondary.
Special teams, Randy Bullock, Brett Kern, Morgan Cox.
So this is where my 4th roster spot comes in. The mystery, it can be a floater. So right. I've said 5 defensive linemen, all that kind of stuff.
Sounds like a floater. Sounds like a personal problem. Zach.
Yeah. So I have Ryan Stonehouse making the roster.
Oh.
I have the other punter, because good punters, which he is a good punter and a young punter, could be picked up by a team that needs a punter off of your practice.
So hang on. So 2 punters and 3 quarterbacks on your final 53?
Yeah. We got the talent to do it. Got the talent to do it.
You don't think they're actually going to do that, do you?
I do. I think that there's a 50% chance that they do.
You have convinced me of the 3rd quarterback. I'm going to need some time to get on the second.
Here's the thing, Brett Kern. They need the backup to Brett Kern. You can't risk putting Ryan Stonehouse on the practice squad. And I think that if you have him on the 53 and Brett Kern starts to falter, boom, plug him right in and get him some game action. I think preseason is going to tell us a lot, but I'm kind of there that I think that it's Ryan Stonehouse's the MVP punter of the future.
Well, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on the special teams. We did an entire episode on special teams. So if you want to go, see what we think about Craig Ackerman and what they can do to fix the return game and all the other issues, like, again, draft a kicker just in the 6th round next year. That's fine. Go check out that episode. It's all over the YouTube pages as well. Anything else you want to add here on the defense? I think that's about it on the defense.
I think that's it.
So, of course, Kingston Group brings you this product each and every Monday and Thursday. Special thanks to the Kingston Group for sponsoring us. BuildKG.com is the website. If you got any questions about your house, any projects, any big projects you're going to do, you're going to buy a house and you're going to renovate something. If you're going to do a new wing for your house, a new bedroom, a new garage, you let them know. They will talk you through it. Kingston Group, BuildKG.com, of course. Make sure you turn on all the notifications on the YouTube page as well. We got all kinds of great coverage from SEC Media Days next week for you live here on the show. We're going to be on Tuesdays next week instead of Mondays. So check that out again. Same time slot, 1 p.m., but on Tuesday next week, so we can bring you all the things that happened to Nick Saban when he's asked about Jimbo Fisher 4,000 times next Tuesday. So we'll do that for you coming up next week. Broadway Sports Media, 440 Sports. F-Words Pod. Make sure you follow Zach, interact with Zach. I think you're starting to come back to life on the Twitter sphere. I like to see that. The animosity and the snark is coming back, so I appreciate that. And then give me a follow as well at Braden Gall. So,
yeah. Are you
I got it all?
Out?
I
think you got it all.
I think that's everything. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you guys for asking questions. Thank you guys for sharing the product. We really appreciate it. Tell everybody about it. We love you guys for it. Thank you so much. Otherwise, have a great weekend. For Zach, I'm Braden. This has been a football show.